Welcome back. It is the 7 o'clock hour here on News Radio 830 KHVH. And as you know, this time is reserved for the SHOPO Hour. And the fellas are in studio. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
God, I almost sounded like I was in Manila there for a moment. And we'd like to welcome you. But it is good to see you. Good to see you. Brother Nick, Brother Steve, Brother Mark. And we were just talking before we came on the air, the seriousness of what's transpired in Israel. I spent the first hour just revealing and trying to share, taking calls. And I'm always very interested in your perspectives, not only with HPD, but everything in general. So I'd like to start off with thoughts, reactions, insights, anything you would like to share in regard to the latest with the war in Israel.
Well,
Brother Mark,
let's just start. It's just very sad, right? And let's place it to where it is. It's a terrorist action, right? They're going after women and children. It's not a war. They're not. Well, Israel declared war,
yes.
But on the other end, it's not a war. They're just going after everyone, right? So it's really tragic. And I was there in July. I mean, It's crazy, So I know I kind of know the lay of the land over there, and but where's the outcry of all these politicians that were all for Ukraine with the Ukraine flags on their lapels and all, right? Where is it for Israel? Come on, these guys are under terrorist attack. It's their 9/11, right? But I think it's going to be there for a long time. I think it's Israel's they ain't backing down on this one.
Nope.
So,
what was it like during your visit? Did you key on anything, conversations, security very visible in locations, tourist areas, or even just in towns that you visited?
Well, there's security all over the place, no matter where you went.
Yeah.
Just, so they have their, I guess what they call them, their reserves, right? Everybody has to serve 2 years, right? So all those people are in uniform with their AKs or the ARs, right? And no matter where you went, there was security. When we went into Jerusalem, we had to go through. It's really weird the way it's broken up over there. They have Section A, B, and C, and Section A is controlled by the Israelis, and then Section B is controlled by the Palestinians. It's really weird. It's crazy.
It was declared as an international zone,
yeah,
and then that kind of fell apart over the years.
So we're going through this checkpoint. Of course, it's crazy fortified, and there's signs. If you're Israeli, or if you're gonna get shot, you're gonna get killed. The only people allowed in there, if you're Israeli, are tour guides. That's it. Tour guides and tourists. That's it. So we got to go through the bus, and we get all checked out, and that was going into Jerusalem. And we went to Bethlehem also, but it was very heavily fortified, no matter where we went.
Did you have to have on your person your passport and ID?
We did, but going through one of the checkpoints, they didn't check. So I guess kind of used to it. But
were your tour buses escorted by security?
No, they weren't.
They weren't.
No, they weren't.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
But we did have when we got to the security checkpoint. Up to that point, we had an Israeli tour guide. But then I think it was a Palestinian tour guide came on and took over.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, it was weird, man.
Was there any reaction to you being an American?
No, none at all.
Okay.
No, every place we went was good. We didn't feel like we were slighted or anything like that. I mean, not at all. But there was very, very heavy security no matter where we went. So we were kind of where we were staying, right in the middle where they had all the protests, right? Because they had their issue with their constitution recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were protesting for like 6 to 8 months, right? So we go up to one of the reservists and ask them, what is all this? And they said, oh, we can't talk about it. We got to stay neutral. Okay, so we ask another person.
Yeah.
So they were telling us how, they want to take rights away from their constitution and all that. But so I was with another guy who was a police officer, right? And so it was 3 of us, police officer and another guy that we travel with. So we see a truck stopped, one of those big box cargo trucks, just stopped in the middle of intersection. I look at my police friend and I go, we're out of here. That could be a bomb, man.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it.
You never know.
That's what I think, right?
Yeah.
So what it was, though, they were blocking off parts of the main business district in Tel Aviv for the protesters, and they were doing it on a weekly or nightly basis, right?
Yeah.
So whoever had that truck parked it in the wrong place. It was messing up traffic. But, hey, I'm looking at it another way because that part of the world is nuts,
Yeah.
So,
I understand.
but those protests, we were in the middle of them. They were very peaceful. They were protesting against their own government, right? Very, very peaceful. None of the crap that goes on, like Black Lives Matter and all that stuff that was going on the mainland. But they were there. They were there for the long haul. They said we're going to come out and until the government changes. But I guess they passed it anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And that was part of the catalyst of the timing. I had mentioned in the previous hour the perception of America with weakness and vulnerability as exhibited by our leadership, decisions made, and where we find ourselves today. But similarly, there was a tremendous division and unrest, politically speaking, and the Knesset and change of prime minister and things that took place. So opportunistic. Our enemies are opportunistic and will exploit anything. Thank you for that, Brother Mark. Brother Steve?
So, Rick, it highlights the importance of border security. And I think we could agree that Israel is considered really elite at how they protect themselves, whether it's their intelligence, whether it's the weapon systems like the Sky Dome, that might not be the Sky Dome missile defense system.
Iron Dome.
The Iron Dome.
Mm-hmm.
Israel is considered to be top at their game as far as what they do to gather intelligence and protect their country because of where they're located between Egypt and Jordan and the West Bank and Gaza. And what I was navigating is this attack was done by Hamas, right? And Hamas is in Gaza. And then you have the West Bank, which is PLO. And it was actually the Hamas group that decided to do this. And I said to myself, how did this slip past the intelligence of both the U.S. and Israel? Okay, that's the first thing. And 2, that was a substantial coordinated effort. So where did Hamas get the funding for this? Because we're only sending money to the PLO side, right? We send money to PLO. We're not sending money to Hamas. So where did Hamas get the money to do what they did? And then who assisted them with that? Because that was a coordinated attack. They were coming, again, I got my intel from what I was watching on different YouTube channels and whatnot. And you saw that it was a coordinated attack. It was over 5,000 Hamas fighters coming into Israel and then kidnapping Israeli citizens and taking them into Hamas-controlled areas. I agree with you 1,000,000%. Hamas understands our relationship with Israel, and for them to be so bold and to be so egregious in what they did, they have zero respect for the Biden administration. I don't care what your political beliefs are. I don't care whether you like them or not. The attack on Israel indirectly is a snub to our country saying, what are you going to do about it? We're not afraid of you. And that's where things get dangerous. And I think there's bigger players here. I think this is going to go on. From what I've been hearing, Israel is retaking back cities. I mean, think about this. You have Hamas that penetrated Israel and is going into Israeli towns with 30,000 people and basically taking control of that city and seizing tanks and other things. There was a failure somewhere, mainly on intel, and that's usually what Israel is supposed to be pretty amazing at.
The Mossad has the reputation as being the finest.
What they do. And again, where's the money coming from? How are other world players coming into this? Again, we give hundreds of millions of dollars to the PLO to keep them at bay, let's say, and they get assistance. Hamas does not. Where did Hamas? Who is backing them, basically, right, Rick? And then it just reinforces a little bit closer to home. America needs to be perceived on the world stage. I don't think we need to be the world's policeman, but we need to be perceived as a country that you don't want to mess with us. And here we have basically Hamas, a quote-unquote small terrorist group. Like, they're not a world power. And they basically said, we're going to do this to Israel. Be damned what the United States thinks about it. And that's kind of a scary perception, Rick. And it reinforces the need for a country to have borders. And Israel, somehow, there was vulnerabilities identified, weaknesses were taken advantage of. And it reminds us, whether it's our border from the south, our border from the north, we're living in a fantasy world if we think we're protected. So that just some of my thoughts on that.
Amen. Just a brief, there's no doubt that Iran is the source, the largest sponsor of terrorism in the entire world. The other is, I question how this can happen. And when you question it, you look inside first instead of outside. Wow, they were able to plan and coordinate. Well, maybe a door was left open. Maybe some information wasn't transmitted. Maybe. And again, there'll be plenty of time for that analysis. But what's before us, no doubt, Iran. And then we look at Iran's partners. You look no further than Russia, of course, for petroleum. China, of course, with Russia by extension. Then you throw it. So that, as I refer to in Vietnam as the domino effect, is pretty profound. The one thing I've always said about our enemies, they are patient. Patient. 9/11 for us, over 2 decades ago. It's 9/11 for Israel. But by extension, this is a message to us as well. Brother Nick, your thoughts today?
So speaking politically, it's interesting that you brought up 9/11. Of course, that's the immediate parallel that I think all of us use if we were to compare the situation in the United States and Israel at the moment. And make no bones about it, I think that in Western countries and Western culture, when there's a terrorist attack against one of us, there's a terrorist attack against all of us. That's been said before, and it's absolutely true. 21, 22 years ago, it happened to us, and some parallels there as well. People taking hostage on airplanes, intelligence, quote-unquote failures, a lot of time spent trying to figure out what happened afterwards and then making up for it. And the way that we live literally changed. Just look at the way that we move about the country. This was the one place in the world, and one of the few places in the world where you didn't need to show identification to go anywhere. And now it takes an absorbent amount of time just to get on an airplane. You used to be able to walk right up to the gate with no issues. Right now you can't. But one thing I think from a law enforcement point of view is that I can almost guarantee you in Israel, it was probably your average everyday law enforcement on the ground that took the first brunt or the first shock of it. And here in the United States, we don't have that quasi-military organization out there that's running around all the time to protect the safety of our citizens. So if a domestic terrorist attack here in the United States or even Hawaii occurs, it's going to be those of us who wear the uniform that are going to be out there trying to put things together very quickly. So I give a large amount of respect to the law enforcement officers, the officials out there in Israel right now that are trying to fight that fight and standing up for what's right out there.
The fact that so many have been captured and taken, and a tremendous majority of women and daughters, and by design. What steps need to be taken to retrieve, to rescue? What kind of strategy needs to be employed? I mean, first is on the ground. But I mean, if we had intelligence that had been compromised or not thorough enough, how do we move forward? And I say we because there are Americans that have been killed. There are Americans that are counted amongst those as hostages. The Biden administration, it's well reported, $6 billion to Iran in the release, quote unquote, of frozen assets, which are only designated for food, medical supplies, and more. Mm-hmm. And when our Secretary of State stood up before us and tried to convince us that that's only accessible, I about put my fist through the TV. What a blatant, unbelievable lie. So we have all of these ancillary moments that have taken place that lead us to now. But how can we execute investigation to rescue these victims?
Well, from what I understand, there's some private groups ready to go in, but intelligence, you got to find out where they are first, right? But there is some private groups ready to go in and get the American hostages out. But where's the United States government? Why we need private groups to do that? And what do? We just sent one carrier over there.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Thoughts before we take our break?
The world is going to watch at what the U.S. does here. We're always on display, but the decisions that are made, I feel, by our country are going to be watched by bad actors throughout the world that don't care for us. So I really hope we do this right.
How about, Nick, allies? The West, as you referred to. I mean, we have the European Union that is right there on the block. What do we secure from allies? And words are different than actions.
Well, again, I feel that this is a threat to everyone. So, not much of a law enforcement or union perspective there, but at the same time, everyone needs to take this seriously. And I would say, just from a personal point of view, that any Western country out there that has citizens that are affected by this on the ground there, or who have died or who have been taken hostage in this action, you have a responsibility to protect them and ensure their safety, even when they're overseas. You are a sovereign country, and your citizens have sovereign rights, and you have an obligation to make sure that they are accounted for and they're safe.
What if Netanyahu decides to invade Iran? He's already stated, this is it. This is it. We're going to destroy Hamas. We're going to wipe them, everything. But then the next step would be Iran. What do you portend if that happens? What takes place?
I don't know, a World War III scenario where now major players are back in one side or the other. I would also say, Rick, with him wanting to do that, then this is going to give Israel, maybe they're just going to, Gaza's, obviously they control all the water, all the electric, all the supplies that get into Gaza. It was a bold move what Hamas did, because the Israelis don't have to allow that to actually happen, right? They only have, I think, a week's worth of water in Gaza. And when you talk about the electric and all that, Israel can shut all that off. And if anything, if he's going to go that route, then you would think that they would want to kind of purge internally from the country and basically Gaza. They're not going to allow anyone to be in Gaza after this. This is going to be, and you probably already thought of this, but if he's talking about going to war with Iran, you would think before they do that, they're going to want to. They're not just going to leave Gaza where it is, right? I don't see how that just stays like it is. No way.
Yeah,
I think they did shut a lot of water and stuff off.
Well,
over
they
there.
can. They have full control over there. Yeah.
But going back to Nick's point, how this initial invasion, or whatever you want to call it, the cops on the ground, right? So this is what I just got from a friend of mine. Israeli cops, right? Just cops on the ground. I guess one of the main things that was targeted was that concert. There was a rave or something, right?
Right.
Israeli cops used their bodies as shields to protect concert goers. So there you go, right? First responders on the ground.
There were over 1,000 in attendance, and 750 are missing. It's a tough story, boys, and I want to thank you for your contributions because we're going to be wrestling with this for quite a while, and I'm prayerful that we do not reach what could be a logical conclusion of a global war.
I'm hoping that we can rally behind Israel like people did with Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think it was more our government that rallied around Ukraine. And
You're correct.
what's also interesting are the pockets of celebratory in London and Canada and other locations where this was a well-received action, which astounds me because they were no better than the brutal Muslim terrorists that beheaded people on camera and shared those images. I don't get it. It's unfathomable how anybody can do anything. Like when ISIS emerged, I went, how in the world is this possible?
Rick, I know you might have to go to commercial soon, but help me out here. Did we get a lot of coverage locally on any of this? Am I missing it? Or
I mentioned in the previous hour.
Okay, yeah.
No, but to answer, no. Okay. There was a dearth, in my estimation. There may have been a short package on the news. I didn't see anything on Sunday in our main paper. Now, I don't take the paper. I was only online. But no, because I don't think there's maybe I'm being, perhaps there's not an understanding of the gravity of and the implications of what transpired. There isn't or it's Israel. I'm not calling out any local news organization because we're just trying to find out why. And then, all right, I'll say it. I looked online on the daily paper, complete section, Ukraine. I looked
Crazy.
and I could not really find. Now, there was one this morning, but I didn't over the weekend, over Sunday.
I guess the politicians, they don't wash their money in Israel. They wash it in Ukraine. So we'll leave it at that.
His name is Mark Curcio, home phone number 808. But we'll continue our conversation. We did not even take one break. Let me get caught up. And then we'll continue our conversation. The SHOPO Hour will resume in a moment. 7:39. Thank you for allowing us to get caught up. Jillian Anderson report after the top of the hour news. I want to turn it over to the fellas. Thank you for the first half of our hour. Very thoughtful conversation. How has the week been since we saw each other last? Anything top of mind that our folks should know about? And then, Mark, I'm going to turn to you in a bit for an update on one of our officers as he begins more of his recovery. But Nick, thoughts from this past week?
Well, I think actually we should start on a good note and hear about that officer.
Let's do that, okay. Brother Mark.
So Officer Felix Gasman, he keeps making strides coming back. He was fitted with some prosthetics and stood up for the first time, hugged his wife, standing up. And, it's going to be a long road. He's got to learn how to walk with those things. But it's definitely progress. It was really good to see that. Yeah. So keep going there, Flex.
Good man. The extent of his injuries were profound.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah. But and bless the medical teams that are able to do their very best to help in this recovery. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
Good story. All the very best. Brother Nick, I return to you.
So the Honolulu Police Department, officers, they receive physical injury like Felix, but often they receive mental injury as well. So I'd like to just give a shout out to the department and finally getting around to turning officers on to the wellness app that just came out through the department last week. I'd like to thank Lieutenant Brandy Yarnell as well for putting that together. So officers finally have an additional resource through the department, to check in on a regular basis anonymously through this feature that allows them to reach out to professionals in the law enforcement community, former law enforcement community members who are out there 24/7 to assist with anything they can help out with as far as mental health, mental well-being, mental fitness.
Yeah, we've had very thoughtful discussions, and appropriately so, because of the incredible, not just professional experiences, personal experience as well. So thanks for sharing that, Nick. Thank you so much. Brother Steve?
I was just thinking when it comes to Felix and his recovery, because when we say the word recovery, we want him to get back to the best quality of life he can have. And I really think that it's important that the listeners realize that in this capacity, when he's on work comp, this is actually city and county HR stepping in. And, whether it's the money to buy these prosthetics, the flight to get the family over there, it really shows that as a larger community, not just the union or the police department HR, now the city and county is stepping in. And we want them to continue to do the right thing for Felix and his family and give them whatever they need, whatever resources they need to attempt to make him whole again, so him and his family can move forward and have the best quality of life. And when we, Derek Pond, myself, met with Felix and his family a few weeks back, they were saying that they have been given so far what their need. But I'm glad that Mark brings that up, because we're really good at highlighting issues when they come up, but it's important to just keep things on people's minds and update, and not forget that when you experience something like that, the recovery is going to be profound, and we're pulling for him. I mean, how great would it be if this guy could come back and actually get on the job again?
Wow.
I mean, what a great goal to have. So
tremendous.
Appreciate you, Mark, bringing that up, and Nick with the wellness app. It really it's a bunch of things coming together to try to attain a goal.
Yeah.
So another thing, when I was talking to Felix's wife at the hospital, and this is to piggyback off what Steve just said, workman's comp, it could be a nightmare to people, right? And but she was saying between workman comp, the city, and everything, it's been so smooth, and they've been very, very cooperative. They ran it and no hiccups, so which is awesome to hear.
That is very good. SHOPO also a benevolent component as well, yes?
Correct. When the SHOPO State Board got elected, we wanted to establish a fund that could be used to assist our members in times of needs. And times of need could be whatever the board felt. When officers need help, we wanted to be able to do that for them. We also wanted to give a platform where if the community wanted to donate, we wanted to have something in place where the community could reach out. And I have to say this, Rick, too. The outpouring of support for the Sapolu family, for Felix and his family, for the Maui wildfire with the officer that lost their house, it's been really overwhelming, not just here locally, but on a national platform. We were we were getting checks mailed to the union from individuals that live on the mainland. And it wasn't just that they sent money. They actually wrote a letter. And if you think about it in this day and age, how often do people take time to put pen to paper and put their thoughts together? You had people taking time out of their day to write full-page letters to say, hey, this is important to me for this reason, and I used to do that, and we stand with you guys. And it's really heartwarming, and we try to say this: community support for police departments and law enforcement entities is super important, and we're seeing that. We've seen it, and I'm excited because I think we're going to continue to see it, Rick.
Understand. Nick, I'll turn it over to you to wrap things up for this segment.
Well, once again, I just want to say thanks, everybody, for all of your support out there to our local law enforcement. Things are not always easy. There's been some very high-profile cases out there lately. I think if you've been paying attention to how the Honolulu Police Department has been going about investigating and solving those issues, you'll see that you actually have a pretty top-notch organization out there when it comes to that sort of thing. So kudos to the department, and also thanks to the public.
And on that note, we'll take our final. It won't be long until we return. I encourage you to give us a call at 521-8383. We'll delve into more topicality on the SHOPO Hour after this. Welcome back, folks. It is the SHOPO Hour here on News Radio, 830 KHVH. 749. I was wondering if I could get kind of a little update and such. I know in the beginning of our conversation, you're going, we need to get outfitted, we need to upgrade, we need uniforms and new and this and all this. This has been, are we going on 2 years together? Pretty close, right? Are there any updates to help supply our officers, Nick?
Yes, so our uniform and equipment committees with the Honolulu Police Department are getting closer. It's an arduous process, unfortunately, but to the union's credit and to the department's credit, I believe this is a priority for the department. The hardest part, more than anything else, was procurement. You can choose the best uniform in the world. I've said this several times. It could be the most functional, durable thing that you could ever possibly imagine. But if you cannot get it in a timely manner, in an efficient way through a good vendor, then it's absolutely useless to approve it. So that from my point of view, union point of view, was the most integral part. And there are some pretty good ideas that are finally coming through that I think both sides have been pushing. If anyone out there from county procurement is listening to me, please open up your eyes and your ears. Your methods are very, very outdated. We need to get beyond this, but we're getting a lot closer.
And Rick, just to give a little bit of context, for the officers that work with Honolulu PD, we would get our uniforms for many years from Pacific Woolen on Keene Street. Okay, they're no longer going to be in business. And the cops could basically every year submit for 3 uniforms, and they were custom. They were measured and tailored to fit. So the folks at Pacific Woolen did a great job. The challenge for them, because they had the contract with Honolulu PD, and we're talking almost 2,000 cops, was they were hand making these uniforms on property. So their turnaround was a little bit of a delay. So if you went in to get fitted, you might get your uniform a year later. Now that might shock some people, and we had some challenges, but basically Nick and his team through his Honolulu board are navigating with the department. Okay, how are we going to get the cops uniform? Where are they going to come from? How are we going to procure them? Or how are we going to do member reimbursement for uniforms? How is all this going to work? And of course, within HPD, you have leadership that comes and goes and can be a little transient. And we have a uniform committee that's made up of HPD leadership. And sometimes the leadership retires or they get moved, and then we kind of go back to the drawing board. So we're definitely hoping for a streamlined process. I know at the state level, we feel confident that Nick and his board are moving this forward. We understand the importance of uniforms. I think all your listeners do.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why we're where we're at, because Pacific Woolen is not going to be the vendor for the Honolulu Police Department.
But if we consider the uniform to literally be a tool of the officer, what will officers realize with an updated, upgraded, literal physical uniform, and how will it affect their service?
I think we'll be looking at something hopefully that's retains the same general appearance of the traditional uniform that the department's been wearing for 40, 50 plus years, but at the same time made of a material that is lighter, more breathable, that is easier to wash and take care of. That's not comprised mostly of wool, which is a difficult fabric to wear and a difficult fabric to clean. And also has more functionality to it in the fact that it just has features that are more up to date. People need bigger pockets, more pockets. They need to be able to get things off quicker and get things on quicker, and so on. And also we need we're looking at gear that mimics uniforms, but has the ability to have things from the belt put on the uniform, get it off the waist, get it off the back.
How much does a current belt weigh for an officer, and the reformation or the upgrade in that regard? What will the officer be treated to then?
Sure. So it depends. When I first started in the department, we used a firearm that was all metal, magazines that were all metal. So the belt at the time was a lot heavier. We transitioned to a firearm that's steel polymer with polymer magazines. That lightened it up a lot. We went to a lighter flashlight. We went to lighter radios. Major Crecho could probably tell you how much the radios used to weigh.
We should call them bricks.
Yeah, back in the day. So
I saw them at the museum.
over the last 15 or so years, the amount of weight that we carry on our waist has gotten lighter. I would guess when I started, it was probably 18 to 20 pounds. Now it's I couldn't tell you, but it's a noticeable difference.
Wow.
Yeah, basically, Rick, there's law enforcement agencies now are realizing that for the health and safety of their officers, they want to take the weight off the hips and transition it more on the torso. Instead of having all that weight on the hips, which can cause the lower back issues, officers can stay in the fight more if the weight is taken off the hips and put on more of an exterior tactical belt. And it's funny, as we were talking about uniforms, Mark's got to know this. Those trousers for the officers here in Honolulu, I mean, they looked good. Pacific Woolen put out a good product. But as far as breathability, it was rough. And I'll tell you what, if you did anything dynamic, and I'm going back a little bit here, you did anything dynamic, how many times did you rip the seat out in your pants, Mark? You did anything. Hey, you had these kind of trousers. They weren't flexible. To tie back in with Nick's point, we need to get a uniform that is not only appearance-wise professional looking, but it's got to be functional.
Exactly.
There has to be a range of motion that's allowed in these uniforms for situations if they become dynamic, so the officer isn't literally ripping out their pants because it's just the material's different.
Or losing 10 pounds at the end of a shift because wool's involved.
Correct.
I think there's a statute against wool being used in any way here in Hawaii. One thing it is not only the belt, we've talked about firearms and et cetera that are a necessity, but the material of this uniform. Is there anything on the market that can help mitigate any type of violent act, whether it's via a blade, a puncture? Can it even heat with burns and things of that nature to try and protect our men and women?
No, I don't think so. I haven't seen any blend of material that I know of that's puncture resistant, fire resistant, or so on. But it's more just about the breathability of the fabric. And there's one other thing that I wanted to add, interestingly enough, is that even though the belt got lighter over the time, we were required to have more stuff on it. So there was always a trade-off there where, it was weird when we first started out, everybody had a taser. In fact, you had to check one out from the arsenal in the beginning there. Now we have those, we have tourniquets, we have cellular phones, and we have glove pockets and a billion other things that we have to put on it. So,
goodness. Brother Steve, wrap it up for us in regard to uniforms.
I was just thinking about the scenes in John Wick where he would go to, the sommelier and get an assortment of stuff, and then you see him getting fitted for these suits with the Kevlar lining and whatnot. We're not at that point, Rick. That's not happening. Those products may be out there, but our cops are not going to be wearing them.
I love the way that Keanu Reeves became a part of our program before our departure. Final thoughts around the room, and start with Brother Mark.
Hey, so with the uniforms, Nick, so we are without a vendor, right? or do we have a vendor?
Yeah, so I'm going to be straight with you, and if I'm wrong, then I'll challenge the department to say that I'm wrong. But currently, we have no Class A vendor. We have no Class B vendor. I don't believe there's a vendor for the SSD uniform. I don't believe there's a vendor for the currently approved exterior vest or external carrier vest as well. So sorry, but yeah, I don't know where to get a uniform.
See, so and that is ridiculous.
Wow.
Between upper management with the police department, procurement with the city, that is ridiculous that these guys do not have a place to go to get a damn uniform. Get everybody in a room and fix this. It's ridiculous.
Rick, I promise, though, when we come here on Mondays, we'll be fully clothed. Don't worry.
Yeah. I have federal officers that will be on board to enforce exactly that. I want to thank you for that, Nick. Thank you, because maybe, general public, you can exert whatever influence and perhaps feedback. And again, this is advocacy for the demands on our men and women that are on the front lines working every day around the clock. You got to have the basics. Basics. Can't get much more than what you wear to work. On that note, Brother Nick, Brother Steve, Brother Mark, thank you so much. And I think we'll definitely be back next week.
Oh, yeah.
If not before, to take calls about your comments and to invite the city on with Brother Nick. Brother Steve will be having Brussels sprouts.
But happy Columbus Day, because today's Columbus Day.
There it is. It certainly is. We'll be back in a moment. Jillian Anderson reporting.